Dr. David Ajibade, and welcome to Your Health in Your Hands. As you may have guessed, I am. We are streaming this not from the studio, but from the United States. And COVID-19 has changed so many things, including the fact that the reason I'm here, I've been here for so long, is because of COVID-19. Travel has become so difficult, and of course, that things need to be done. But that has not stopped us from our core mission, which is to provide you with tangible, actionable information, especially where your health is concerned. Now, it has all been about COVID-19 this year 2020. And so we thought it would be good also to help give you a perspective on how COVID-19 looks like in the United States and how physicians in the U.S. are treating COVID-19. And we're very fortunate to meet our guest today, and she has graciously agreed to share with us some of this valuable information. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest, who is Dr. Mercy Edionwe. I hope I got that right.
Yes, you did.
And I did. All right, thank you. She is an internist, an internal medicine physician who also does a lot with ER, emergency medicine, and intensive care medicine as well.
Yeah.
So you must be seeing a lot of action where COVID-19 is concerned, right?
Yes, for sure.
So
yes,
thank you.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
So welcome to the show. All right. So what is it like? And I know we've talked about this a lot before you came on. I was like, okay, we want to hear your stories, and I know you have some very interesting stories of what's going on. Tell us about COVID-19.
Okay. Well, again, thank you for having me. Well, COVID-19, it came upon us 2020. We saw a lot of cases in the earlier phase, February, March, and then things started kind of going on an upward rate of number of positive cases in the summer, and then it started going on the decline. But currently now we're fearing that we're going back up, and the number of positive cases we're seeing them in the hospital. They're increasing steadily. So we're very worried about that.
Yes, we are. And you're in Texas, right? Houston.
Yes, I am.
Houston,
yes.
Texas.
Yes.
And it seems, a couple of days, or was it a week ago, Texas was the first to hit the million mark, right?
Yes, it was. We've had several different areas of cities that have had hotspots. The latest one was El Paso. And so that really tipped us over to that million mark, as you have said. So it, again...
Right, some people say, if I may jump in, some people say that, well, having testings are one thing. So it doesn't really matter if there are so many people with COVID-19. What matters is the hospital admissions, the severe cases, and the deaths. Is that being reflected?
Right. So in my particular hospital, we are just seeing a steady flow of those who are being admitted for COVID. It's for me in particular, I particularly work nights. So I'm seeing maybe 2-3 cases, whereby in the summer, I was probably seeing 1, maybe none on a daily basis. Now I'm seeing 2 or 3. So that's kind of just showing how there's a little bit of increase. Now I work in a small hospital, a 50-bed hospital. So imagine that multiplied by 4 or 5 of the downtown hospitals in Houston. Take, for example, El Paso. They've gotten to the point where they're actually shipping patients to nearby San Antonio because they've kind of ran out of hospital beds. So we in Houston, we have not had that, but that's just to show you how there's been an increased amount in Texas.
Okay. All right. Well, that's not very encouraging. But okay, let's talk about patterns. What are we seeing now with regards to COVID-19? I mean, I know the general findings were men are more likely to have COVID-19 the more severe forms, they're more likely to die from the condition. Um, we're hearing that the African Americans or Black people are more likely to die from the condition. If you're obese, if you have hypertension, so stories like that. What are you seeing over there?
Yeah, and those are all true. For the most part, I've been seeing those who have uncontrolled comorbidities or comorbidities in general. And when I refer to comorbidities, I'm saying pre-existing conditions, just as you had mentioned, high blood pressure, diabetes, and particularly lung disease. So those are people who may have underlying asthma or COPD, which is called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, also known as smoker's disease. Any underlying lung condition, we see that when they get COVID, it really exacerbates their underlying condition and makes it worse. So we're having to deal with an active flare up of their underlying lung condition as well as the COVID infection. And so their oxygen level is very tenuous, meaning that we're very worried in those type of populations. Again, a lot of times in the beginning, we were seeing people coming in late stages, maybe because they were afraid. But now that everybody's aware of the symptoms to look out for when you are suspecting that you have COVID, they're coming in earlier stages. So we're not seeing as much death as we did in the beginning when it first came upon us.
Speaking about what works and what doesn't work, tell us about ventilators. Do they make a difference? How effective are they?
Ventilators, we tend to see that those who are on ventilators, they're very poor prognosis. And so as a result, we see a high mortality rate. Now, is it because they're on the ventilator or is it because they're on the end stage of COVID infection? That is yet to be determined, but we try from the hospital end, we try to keep people away from ventilators as much as possible. So you'll see people who have oxygen saturations in the high 70%, which for a normal person, oxygen saturation is the measurement of oxygen in your blood. Typically, you should have 90% and higher. If you have below 90%, that's when you may start feeling shortness of breath, and even lower and lower and lower, you get more profound difficulty with breathing. So with COVID, what's really weird is you'll see them on the screen. They have oxygen levels of 78%, but they're busy on their phone and just, and you knock and you're like, how are you doing? And they're like, oh, I'm fine. I don't know. What, is there something wrong? So that's kind of remarkable. I've never seen that in a active lung disease in its before. So it's definitely something that we look out for. How are the patients feeling, their symptoms, and if they need the ventilator, definitely we give it to them. But there are other oxygen therapies that we use before we get to having to use that ventilator.
So it's more or less a last resort now, as opposed to earlier on when it used to be like that's the first thing they do. Mm-hmm. And I was hearing numbers as high as 80% of people who were placed on ventilators eventually died. Mm-hmm. And as you said, we don't know whether it was actually because of the ventilator or because they were already so far gone, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 Because those.
Yeah, but the good thing is, go ahead.
From what I have seen, those who were placed on ventilators definitely needed it. So that's why I say, it's really, is it they were at that end stage that's why they had that mortality, or is it because of the ventilator itself? Could be a combination of both.
Doc, we're going to take a break now and then we'll be right back, okay? Oh, okay. Welcome back to our second segment, and I'm here with Dr. Mercy Edionwe. It's always great to have people come back to Nigeria who are Nigerians by nature, who are coming back to give back, because we definitely need a lot of help in Nigeria. So thank you. Mm-hmm. All right. So speaking about Nigerians and Africans, I'm really, really interested in hearing from you what are the, if any, disparities between not necessarily the treatment, how you treat patients, whether they're white or black,
Yes.
but what you've seen from having treated COVID-19 patients for almost a year now? Are there any patterns in terms of prognosis, in terms of the course of the disease? What can you tell us about it?
What I've observed mainly, I am a Black physician. So for me, treatment wise, I treat all races practically the same. I know in the US, we have had issues where, there's been some racial bias when it comes to treatment. And I know the medical community has been very strong in trying to make sure that there's an equalizer. So from that angle, I'm not seeing any biases from a racial standpoint. What I do observe, though, is that it's just the comorbidities. Sometimes, and I just have to be truthful about this, us as people, we tend to wait until, the disease is kind of in its unbearable stage before we seek treatment, going to a clinic, for example. And the best time to actually take care of a disease, let's say hypertension, or let's say diabetes, or is in that beginning stage. And the way you can prevent it from further damaging your body is having your regular checkups. So I said all of this is because COVID infection, when you have the COVID-19 infection, it wreaks havoc in your body. So any underlying conditions that you may have, particularly if it's uncontrolled, gets worse. And it makes it very difficult for your body to fight that infection and also have to fight that underlying condition at the same time. So,
so let me jump in. If it's, because what I'm hearing you say is that if the patient, somebody is in their 50s, they have hypertension or they have diabetes, they've not been taking their medication like they're supposed to be taking their medication, they've not been going to the clinic like they should be, and then they suddenly have, let's say, a sore throat, or they lose their sense of smell, which are both very classic signs of the beginning part of a COVID-19 infection. What you're saying is that they are more likely to have a more severe form, and they are more likely to have, it will be more difficult to treat them as opposed to if they were taking their medication as and when prescribed by the doctor. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Why? Why is it more severe? I mean, this is the first time in my, I don't think COVID-19 is such a unique condition. I don't think there's ever been any disease an infectious disease that depends, that is influenced so much by the patient's presence or absence of a non-communicable disease like hypertension, diabetes, something like that. I'm just saying that from my own experience. What's your experience when we're talking about infectious diseases?
Yeah. So, and that's the same thing for me. The way the infection with COVID-19, how I see it is it kind of, like I said earlier, it kind of ramps up the system. So it's kind of gets the system very heightened, very on alert, overworks the system of your body. And so again, if you have these conditions, underlying conditions, and they're uncontrolled, it will affect that. And that also, in combination with the infection, overall wreaks havoc to the body. In other words, it does not do well to the body to have uncontrolled underlying condition in the setting of this type of an infection. or any infection rather, but in particular COVID-19. That's why it's just important for those who have not to who don't think COVID-19 is serious. It really is a very serious disease. I have seen it.
Mm.
Like you had said, someone comes in with a cough. Few hours later, we're having to increase the amount of oxygen we're giving this person. They're talking to you fine, like me and you. Few hours later, they're huffing and puffing, coughing, coughing. And this is in a matter of hours. So it's not something that, I mean, you have to take it serious. Wearing a mask, washing hands, 6 feet distance, reduce the amount of exposure to crowds. Those sort of things help a lot to prevent transmission of this COVID infection.
Any particular stories that you can share with us of some of the experiences that really stood out to you from working with COVID-19 patients?
There's a lot of stories. The one that really strikes me is a gentleman who actually had just recently recently came from one area of the state to our area after having attended a funeral for one of his loved ones. And he had some comorbidities. He was by himself. I think his family was going to come later. Initially, he was walkie-talkie, he was fine, but he started progressing worse. Things were just going worse for him, his breathing, his oxygen. And it got to a point that, he was literally dying. And this was in the earlier stages of COVID-19. And so he was tired of fighting. He was tired of the breathing. He was tired of breathing against this gunk of infection in his lungs. And he said, "You guys just need to let me die." And it just stood with me. I was the physician that had to eventually say, "Okay, are you sure, sir?" He's like, "Yes, just let me go." And so I had to write that sign. I had to sign and write that order, withdraw oxygen. The minute we withdrew oxygen, he was dead. And this was somebody who was talking to us and, giving us very with us. As soon as we took off that oxygen, boom, dead. So that sticks to my mind. This is not something that you want to mess with at all.
Now, how old was this individual?
This individual, I want to say, he was in his maybe late 50s, early 60s.
So he was a young man, pretty much. And this is a black or white man?
He was actually Hispanic.
Hispanic, okay. And we know Hispanics too. Hispanics obviously mean them like the Mexicans, the Puerto Ricans. That's so for those of our audience, members of our audience who don't know what Hispanic means. So like they are the browner skinned people as opposed to the black people, right?
Yes.
Okay, and he just went for a funeral, and so probably he might have caught that COVID-19 at the funeral. Was it a funeral of a person who died from COVID-19 as well?
It was if I can't remember. I don't want to say that. Right. I'm not quite sure. It was in the earlier parts. His family
came in. So he came in with symptoms such as what? Cough? What were the initial presenting symptoms?
So he came in with cough. He came in with the loss of taste. He came in with the shortness of breath. And the shortness of breath was the trigger that made him decide to come to the hospital. He had the muscle ache.
He walked in.
He walked in. He walked in. He had the muscle aches. He had the tiredness. That's what I remember. And then he was just on a little bit of oxygen, and then all of a sudden we're having to increase the amount. And he went from somebody who was like functioning, you would see him, you could be probably able to just do common household chores, to someone who looked like he had been feeble and chronically sick for a long period of time. He just changed in matters of days. And despite our
so
efforts,
what was the duration? What was the period of time from admission to death?
it was, I want to say it was about a week.
About a week.
Mm-hmm.
And his family was, obviously they were not allowed to come in. They were outside, and so they probably didn't have the chance to say goodbye to him, you think?
Well, this was in the beginning when we decided that we will start allowing family in the early beginning. They were also traveling from that funeral when they heard that he was in the hospital. So when he said, I am going to die and I am ready to die, our hospital put in place, we fully gowned the family members and allowed them to come in.
I see. I'm sure they were grateful for you. Let them do that.
Yeah.
Well, that's tragic, and that's a story that unfortunately happens all over the United States and all over the world too many times. So thanks for sharing that. We're going to take a quick break now, folks, and then we'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. We've been talking about COVID-19 in the U.S., and of course, there are lessons that we can learn from that in Nigeria. For example, we've been talking about, ever since we started these shows, NTA shows, we've been saying your health is in your hands. You cannot take things lightly. If you have hypertension, you want to make sure you check your blood pressure, especially if you're over the age of 40. You want to make sure you check your blood pressure regularly. If your doctor determines that you have hypertension, you need to be on antihypertensive medications. Don't take this lightly. The same thing with diabetes, the same thing with other health conditions. COVID-19, probably more than any disease, has shown us that you have to take your health seriously. As we've said over and over and over again, those who die, those who have the severe form of the disease, and even those who survive, don't forget, many times it's not the end of the story. Some of them have long-lasting physical and mental health challenges that come as a result of the initial infection. So please, your health is in your hands. It makes a lot of sense to be strong, to be healthy, to fight for your health and that of your families, so that when things like COVID-19 happen, I'm not saying it's just because of COVID-19, but when things like COVID-19 happen, I mean, it applies to injuries, it applies to road traffic accidents, it applies to strokes, it applies to anything. We know that those who have been taking care of their health prior to the incident, prior to the events, they tend to have a better prognosis. They tend to be able to, their course of treatment, they respond more to their course of treatment if they were healthy, healthier prior to the event than if they were not healthy. And I can give you story after story after story. Bottom line, what we know about COVID-19 is that it thrives in the presence of a weak immune system. I mean, that's not the only thing. But if your immune system is weak, if your immune system is dysregulated, COVID-19, as the Dr. Edionwe has said, it triggers, it activates all kinds of bad stuff happening around your body. So it's very important. It's very important that your immune system is well nourished and well fed. That's why we keep on talking about, are we ready, Doc? We keep on talking about vitamin D. We keep on talking about vitamin C. And there it is. You see, that's a doctor who's taking it. I'm sure you and your family.
Yeah.
Vitamin C. And of course, what's the third one? Zinc. And zinc. Do you take this every day, Doc?
I do, because I want my immune system to be at par when I'm seeing these patients. Yes.
Absolutely. And that's a doctor talking. Many times with doctors, sometimes, I'm not going to say all doctors, but sometimes doctors don't believe in supplements. Right now, you absolutely should, because our diets simply do not have all the nutrients that you need to be able to fight COVID-19. I'm particularly vulnerable because I travel a lot. I mean, I've crushed since the past 2 or so months I've been in the States. I've been traveling back and forth. I personally, I have to take a special care of my health, a special care of my immune system. So I'm taking my vitamin D, I'm taking my zinc, I'm taking my vitamin C, I'm taking immune boosters, I'm taking multivitamins, I'm taking everything because walking in and out of planes. I'm in crowds. I'm in restaurants. I'm going back and forth. I cannot afford to take chances, especially in a foreign country. So it's very, very important. I mean, it doesn't matter, even if you are not going around, if you're staying indoors and you're a black person, you need to be on vitamin D because you're not getting enough sun, which your body needs to make vitamin D. So you need to be on vitamin D. We cannot overemphasize these things. So especially during this Christmas period, this winter, well, we don't have winter in Nigeria, but a lot of people are going to be staying indoors. So please take care of yourself. Doc, thank you so much again. Do you have any final words you want to give to your countrymen and women?
No, I think we'll all get through this. Just be really mindful of your surroundings when you're in public. Try to wear a mask. Protect yourself.
Right.
If you can, before you eat, wash your hands. You don't want what you're touching and you put it in your mouth or your eyes. You don't want that to be how you get it. So just be mindful, and we'll get through this. We'll definitely get through this. And like you said, take your vitamins, and when you can, see your doctor, and we'll get through this. Thank you for having me on your show.
And thank you for being on. Very well said, and we hope we can get you on more to share your wisdom with us and with our people back home. All right, God bless. Take care, then.